people ask me, like, all right, Trey, you say that liberals failed to reach working class Americans, poor white people. Well, how can we do that? What can we do as liberals to reach these people better? Are you me? I mean, really? What can we do? Why? What are you new here? Welcome to America, man. Lying to poor people's right up there with apple pie and getting drunk with bald eagles. That's what they did. That's what Trump did. That's it. And they ate that up like deep fried Oreo at the county fair, baby. Why?
That was Trey Crowder, better known as the liberal redneck of YouTube fame. And that, of course, is comedy. But the question of whether white, non-college degreed, blue-collar Americans will ever come back to the Democratic Party is quite serious, particularly after the election of Donald Trump, who, while he didn't win because of the white working class, you can credit his narrow win to white college-educated voters and white women, his win certainly reignited the decades-long debate inside the Democratic Party over whether they can once again be the party of the white working stiff. And joining me now is Krystal Ball. Her new book is Reversing the Apocalypse, Hijacking the Democratic Party to Save the World, and it offers her prescription for wooing back white voters and preventing the rise of the next Trump. And I'm going to talk with Krystal first. Krystal, and you just saw the sort of comic version of that with Trey Crowder saying, just go and lie to the white working class. Just tell them you're going to do everything for them. Saturday Night Live had an opposite take on that, with Donald Trump doing his version of, I don't know if this is lying to working class white voters or just wooing them, but this is Saturday Night Live last night.
Thank you for coming, sir. I guess I wanted to talk about my own child who's in an after-school program.
Junked.
Okay, great. It's just I work 2 jobs for minimum wage.
Minimum wage, gone.
Okay, perfect. It's just we can't afford a new house because my mortgage is underwater.
We're getting rid of that.
Oh, my mortgage?
No, your house. Junked.
Okay, and we can't even drink our own water because there's lead in it.
No, we're going to keep that, though.
And at the end of that, the voter still says, you're still my president. Why even bother to lie to white working class voters if even when Donald Trump literally says, I'm taking your health care, they're like, we love you?
Well, I think it's going to take some time, right? People have this commitment tendency where when they vote for a candidate, they want to see the good in that person. So it's going to take some time. But voters are going to know that they're getting screwed over after they don't see the jobs come back, after they don't see the coal mines reopen, after they don't see the steel mills reopen. I just want to make something clear, though. I'm not advocating here for pandering to the white working class and telling them what they want to hear, or even really explicitly trying to get the white working class back on board. What I am arguing is that the problems that are afflicting not just the white working class, but the American working class in general, are really central to the problems facing the world. I mean, we see the rise of Trump here, we see Nigel Farage, we see Brexit, we see Marine Le Pen, even the rise of things like ISIS. You can really draw a line to this massive economic transformation which has roiled the world. So the party doesn't need to change what they're about in terms of race and gender and those incredibly important issues. But what we do need is a prescription for dealing with this economic mess. And saying you're going to lift the minimum wage is not enough. I mean, if you're you're driving a truck, let's say, you have a middle-class life, and now that job is being threatened by automation, you don't want to hear, well, I'll get you $15 in a minimum wage. You want to hear how you're going to be able to re-achieve that middle-class life and that stability that you've come to depend on and that you've come to be used to. So what I want is for the party to figure out how we can focus on that economic solution that's going to create an inclusive prosperity that helps, yes, the white working class, but helps all American workers to succeed in this country.
But when you look, so if you look at Donald Trump's margins, right? I mean, he barely won in some of these states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. He won by these tiny, tiny, tiny margins. But, you know, I think one of the challenges is that a lot of people look at those margins and they say, wait a minute, this isn't because Donald Trump is a real champion of the working class. It's because white voters in general are just Republicans. And there is no message, even if you're saying, we won't make you Kansas. Kansans vote for Republicans. People in these states who know that what Republicans do to them, they know that the Democrats save the auto industry, they just want to vote for Republicans. Even if you gave them an economic argument, they want the wall, right? They want deportations.
Well, I live in Kentucky now, as you know, and the interesting thing here is that Democrats still win. I mean, we just had a Democratic governor last time around, and he was just recently ousted. We just lost control of the House. You still have Democrats who win in places like East Kentucky at the state level. But the National Democratic Party, the brand image in this part of the country, has really taken a big beating, and there's a sense that there's a condescension from the National Party, that they look down on voters, let's say in coal country, and have an attitude of, well, they're never going to vote for us anyway, so we may as well write them off. Now, maybe they won't come around. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think if you engage with the economic issues that are making life tough in these regions of the country, I think you do have a shot at winning back these voters. I also think, Joy, there's another piece beyond the policy. We've got to look at the type of candidates that we're running. We tend to have this particular lens of leadership. We of course, we love people who've been educated at Harvard, the Ivy League. Those folks are fantastic. But we also need to look at people who have lived the experience of the American worker. We need to look to the labor community for those local leaders. We need to look at nurses and teachers and people who have served in the military who can connect verbally on a cultural level better with their communities.
Yeah, well, I want to broaden this out, and let's actually broaden this panel out right now. And I want to bring in Trey Crowder, the aforementioned liberal redneck himself, and Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com. So, Trey, we have great fun with your YouTube videos here at AM Joy, but let's talk a little bit about what you just heard from Crystal, because she's essentially saying that the image of the Democratic Party is the problem, not necessarily the policies, which are pro-worker and pro-working class. Is there anything Democrats could even do to change their image among people in the white working class, in your view?
Well, like I said in the video, you just got to lie to them. That's the thing. That's what really works. No, obviously that's a joke. I want to make that clear. I'm not advocating actually lying to my own people, But as far as what can be done to rehabilitate that image, we could stop. When I say we, I mean we on the left could stop having these, arguments about, referring to them as, like Frank Rich's article, no sympathy for the hillbilly, and are they even worth saving? And these kinds of discussions, would be a good place to start.
But Trey, isn't the reality though that for a lot of voters, or a lot of white voters, period, the Democratic Party's image is so defined by the idea that they are constantly seeking civil rights for non-white people, that they are the party of civil rights for black people and civil rights for gay people, and that white Christians are just not a part of the mix. I mean, is there any lie you could tell that would take away that image? Because that is what the Democratic Party's been doing for the past 60 years.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's fine. I don't think that, that is or should necessarily be a problem with these people, that it's the party of equal rights. It's just that, and not just the Democrats, but for a long time these people, my people, felt like literally no one cared about the things they were going through, and then a guy showed up who pretended to, and now he's the champion of the working poor or whatever, even though, like you said, that's not entirely accurate. But they were just desperate for something to believe in, I think, in a lot of instances, you know what I mean, for somebody to believe in them, basically.
And Jason, do you have a concern that the Democratic Party, in trying to find this alchemy, find this formula to win back white voters, to have a message, as Crystal says, that's inclusive and that, as Trey says, is concerned about them, that the party ends up neglecting its base, meaning neglecting people of color?
Yeah, I mean, Joy, they can be in the lab with a pen and a pad working on the best speeches in the world. It doesn't change the fact that these people, when have we ever had an American election that wasn't about white working class people? Like whether it was Reagan Democrats or NASCAR dads. Working class white guys are always what everyone's trying to get, and they don't like to vote for Democrats. It doesn't really matter what you say or do. So what I think the Democrats should focus on is, look, strong economic policy, making sure we're respectful of people culturally, and in particular, and it was great that you showed those margins there. You know what those margins in Wisconsin were, and those margins in Michigan, and those margins in Pennsylvania? Those were people who had been expunged from voter rolls. If the Democrats spent more time working on voter suppression, they probably wouldn't have lost those states. Chasing after working class white voters, that's fine, but that's not the solution. That's not going to win you back those blue states.
Crystal?
Well, I think we need to look beyond this past presidential election and just look at what's happened across the country. I mean, Republicans almost have enough state legislatures now to themselves unilaterally have a constitutional convention. That's how badly the Democratic Party has been devastated across the country.
But isn't that proof that white voters just want to vote Republican? And I mean, if you look at the health care maps,
no, I don't think so at all,
benefited
because that's a recent phenomenon that's happened. We haven't always been in such bad straits across the country. But what we've had is the party has this is going to sound negative, but collapsed down just to those civil rights pieces, which are incredibly important. But we don't actually have an economic message. We are not actually dealing with this economic crisis, which is roiling not only our own country, but the globe. The top 3 occupations right now in the country are fast food worker, essentially, cashier, and sales clerk. All 3 jobs, by the way, which are in danger of being automated. So what are we going to do? What are we going to say when we don't only have a crisis of not enough good jobs in this country, but just not enough jobs? The party needs to focus on that, and I think if we do, we will win back American workers of every color.
And Trey, I'm going to give you the last word on this. The polls show only 3% of Trump voters right now regret their votes. Can you foresee a time when folks in your community are back to voting for Democrats?
Yeah, and I'm glad you say back to voting, because in my specific instance, my home county was historically a blue county. Now it's very small and very rural, so it didn't make that much of a difference in the state of Tennessee, but that was the reality. And so I do think it can get back there. And also I'll say that I'm a comedian, I'm on the road a lot, and I hear anecdotally already about people, you know, regretting their decision to vote for Trump, starting to think that they, you know, may have made a mistake. And like, I agree with what Crystal was saying earlier. It's really early right now. I mean, we're a few months in. I do think that will continue to happen as they continue to see him consistently fail them the way that he will. I think they'll come around, at least on Trump, and maybe leave the door open for us to grab some of them back.
All right. Well, this is a fascinating debate, and we will continue to have it on the show. Crystal Ball and Trey Crowder. Great to meet you virtually, Trey. Thank you, Crystal. And Jason Johnson will be back later in the hour. Congrats on the book, Crystal. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.